everyone, welcome to Emma, a true infidelity story. I'm excited to share a new story with you. My husband had gone out of town for a few days for work. The idea of being home alone didn't appeal to me much. The silence, the slightest sounds echoing through the empty house at night, the thoughts that filled my mind when I was alone. To escape from these, I invited my closest friend Emma over. Emma had been my most trusted friend for years. We could talk about anything together, dive into the past and laugh for hours. That night started like that too. I felt a slight excitement as we opened a bottle of wine in the kitchen. For some reason, the energy of the night felt different. Maybe I was enjoying the taste of freedom with my husband away. I felt like I had momentarily forgotten my responsibilities. Emma and I moved to the living room. I lit some candles and created a slightly cozy atmosphere. We started with innocent conversations. We talked about our past relationships, our university memories. Our laughter echoed in the night. With every passing hour, wine bottles started to get emptied. The relaxation and lightness inside me were giving way to another feeling. Emma's eyes were slightly narrowed. Careful, she looked at me, twirling her glass in her hand. Then she smiled softly and suddenly asked, "Have you ever thought about crossing boundaries?" I stopped and looked at her for a second. Something strange stirred inside me. My heart beat a fraction faster. But I laughed it off because of the effect of alcohol. "What do you mean?" Asterisk, I said, laughing. Emma shrugged. Asterisk, just shouldn't. We question some things. Life is short. Should people always act rationally? Aster. Her words sent a strange tremor inside me with my slightly intoxicated brain. I thought it was just a conversation, but I remembered nothing of the happenings of the rest of the night. The only thing I knew was that when I opened my eyes in the morning, there was an unrest inside and our cute dog. Leo was holding my husband's watch in his mouth. My head was pounding. It felt like someone was hammering inside my brain. My mouth was dry, and there was a strange heaviness in my stomach. I parted my eyelids. The curtains were slightly open, and the dim morning light was filtering in. The room was a mess. The sheets were scattered, but what really scared me was something else. Someone was lying next to me. Emma. My breath caught in my throat. My eyes widened, but my body was still motionless. Fragments of memories from the night began to swirl in my mind. Wine, laughter, whispers. But everything was blurry. The other side of the bed was in chaos, and I only had a nightgown. I felt nausea, no asterisk. Whispered by myself. Emma changed me with sleepy eyes. There were no minor signs of regrets in his face. Last night, asterisk, forced myself to talk. My voice trembled. Emma stopped for a moment, then shook her head a little. "It was a mistake," he said peacefully, but his voice was very calm, as if she said these words just to assure me, was this really a mistake for him? Or was it something else? A trembling ran through me. Emma's apathy tightened his stomach even more. "What did we do?" Asterisk, I asked in a sound of my knee. The hole shrunk. Asterisk, we were drunk. It was part of that time. There is no need to panic. Asterisk, but I felt strangled. It was as if something got stuck in my neck. Was it just a mistake? Or was it an indication that something started? The way I was about to ask him what he thought, Leo Sparks, my eyes quickly turned to the door. Leo was at the entrance to the kitchen. His eyes were attached to us in general. A calm and obedient cute dog was. But now his ears were attached back and his teeth were a little visible. I felt a strange discomfort inside. Leo was watching us as if he understood something. Can a cute dog understand what's going on? Leo's eyes pierced my heart like a blade of guilt. And at that moment I felt that something had gone wrong. What had really happened last night? Leo suddenly barking and proceeded. His fur was standing at the end, and his eyes were fixed to the kitchen corner. A knot was formed in my stomach, and I felt an indescribable fear. He was always a calm and playful cute dog, but now he was different, as if he had a danger. The way I stood, and was about to find out what was wrong with him, he suddenly came with something in my mouth, a small, shiny object. First I could not tell what it was. I reached out of my hand, but Leo pulled back a little, as if he did not want to give me. My heart started beating fast. I spoke slowly, tried to calm it down. "Leave it, boy, come show me." Leo's eyes never left me. Then, hesitating, he dropped the object in my palm. At that moment a cold fear spread through me. This was a clock, But there was not just a clock. It was my husband. My blood got cold. My hands started trembling. Emma came closer and looked at my hand, and for a moment there was silence. Then his eyes widened. "What is it doing here?" she whispered. I struggled to breathe, my head starting to pound. The watch strap was slightly torn with small scratches on it. But most importantly, it was still working. The battery hadn't run out. That meant it hadn't been here for long. It had just fallen. My stomach churned. 1,000 thoughts raced through my mind. We had drunk a lot last night, had fun. But I couldn't remember the night clearly. I couldn't even remember when we got home. What if my husband had come back last night? What if we hadn't noticed him coming into the house? What if he had seen us? My stomach tightened, and a shiver ran through my whole body. It couldn't be. It was impossible. My husband had left for out of town yesterday morning. I knew that because I had packed his suitcase. But what if he hadn't left? What if he had come back here last night? What if he had been watching us? What if he had seen everything for a moment? Our eyes were locked onto each other's. I could sense that she had the same thought. But neither of us dared to verbalize it. She got up without saying a word, and her eyes went toward the kitchen door. Maybe he dropped it. This morning came out her shaky voice. But we both knew that was the most ridiculous lie we had ever heard. I had been married for 6 years, and my husband never took his watch off his wrist. It had just dropped here. Something must have happened last night. But when I closed my eyes and tried to recollect some memories, we had had some wine, laughed together, and then it just became blurred like a shadow fading from my mind. I seriously tried to remember, but the mind was betraying me. Just then, Leo barked again, and a noise suddenly pierced through from the kitchen. Emma stepped backward, and I became paralyzed with fear in the distance. Leo continued to low, dangerous growl. My gaze turned toward the corner of the dark kitchen. There was something there, something or someone. I could see no movement in the kitchen corner, but Leo's growls persisted. Nevertheless, the unexplained fear was growing out of my anxiety. Behind me, Emma stood holding her breath, her terrified eyes wide. There was silence for a few seconds, no movement, no sound. However, the atmosphere's very quietness was unnerving. Breathing was difficult for me, because of an unseen burden. At that point, Leo was walking beside me. As I made my way to the kitchen, I saw a glass. As I got closer to the counter, I paused. My husband was the owner of the glass. He always drank water from this glass, which was his favorite. My blood froze, my stomach rumbled. I reached out my hand, my fingers touching the cold glass surface. The glass was damp. In fact, there were still a few drops of water inside. So this glass had been used recently. Emma approached me breathlessly and stared at the glass. Our eyes met. We were thinking the same thing. Was my husband here? Had he come home last night? Did he see us? Hannah gripped my entire body. My knees felt weak. I tried to remember, but nothing was clear. I couldn't remember. I didn't even know when Emma and I had fallen asleep. What if my husband had come here? Then what if he had seen us and quietly left? What if he had just watched and left early in the morning? My stomach tightened. It felt like the world was crashing down on me. It couldn't be. It couldn't be. There was an indescribable fear inside me. This wasn't just the fear of being caught. It was much bigger than that. If my husband had been here and seen everything, why hadn't he said anything? Why hadn't he sent me a message? Or why hadn't he started an argument? Wasn't his silent departure more terrifying? My phone rang at that moment. A cute, vulgar vibration shocked me off my chair. I seized my phone with shaking hands, my heartbeat going wild. I looked at the screen again. The message was from my husband. "I'll be home early tonight, missing you dearly." Ice filled my hands. My fingers squeezed the phone hard, but I couldn't help it. They were shaking. Sal leaned in quietly to glance at the message, and immediately turned pale. It was as if the blood had drained from her face. Leo was still there staring at me like he knew everything. The panic and guilt raged in me, wrestled with each other. What was I to do? What was I supposed to do? Did my husband not learn of his missing watch? No, or did he know but did not tell me? Or was he playing games? The knot in my stomach tied tighter. My mind started to get darker by the minute. Did my husband know what would happen when he came home? Would he question me? Or did he have a full picture of everything? Or was he coming back stealthily for revenge? I shuddered. I never thought everything would collapse into such a speedy nightmare. It felt like boiling water was poured over my face. I was afraid. But what named at me most was the unknown. What my husband was thinking. I still had Emma's panicked voice in my head telling me that we had to destroy the evidence, that I needed to discard that watch and hide that glass to just pretend that nothing happened. My inner voice said that wouldn't work. But whatever I had done, there was no way out if he had seen them growing and dizzying. Feelings gained more force with each passing minute. Why was that watch here? When did it arrive? And did he really see everything while pacing slowly around the room? Everything was going to turn into a disaster. I felt quickly. I looked around the room. But all things seemed blurred up. Everything seemed complicated and hazardous. How sensible was it to hide that glass, the watch, everything? If my husband had come home and noticed this night, there was no escape. Or maybe this incident was already drawing more attention. I was so tense that I couldn't relax for a moment. My eyes kept glancing into every nook and corner. And all of a sudden, everything seemed to wear the same meaning. Suddenly I heard Leo barking fiercely. This wasn't normal. Leo was usually a calm, cute dog. But now he was growling strangely. It was as if there was a real threat, and he could sense it. His barking indicated that something was wrong. That something strange was happening as I tried to figure out what was going on. Emma also immediately caught my attention. She too was tense from the sound. Her eyes were wide with fear, and she seemed to be struggling to breathe. At that moment I noticed something. Leo wasn't in the kitchen. He was at the front door of the house, barking and looking outside. As the sound slowly faded, I felt that we shouldn't be left alone in the room. At that moment everything changed. I slowly opened the door. A voice whispered inside me, "Is anyone there?" A silhouette from the door began to move silently. I felt the situation was getting worse. I couldn't dare to open the door quickly, because I knew everything was going upside down. But Leo's position became even more worrying. Their frightened stomach ulcers indicated that someone was really outside. I focused on the eyes of the door tighten. A sound broke the silence at the door and opened slowly. At that moment, I felt that everything was over. What will happen now? Leo was still barking in fear. My mind was a mess. Was this my husband or someone else? At that moment, Emma also became quiet, and she looked at me with her eyes and asked, "What should we do?" I just nodded my head and said, "I don't know." Leo barking stopped. But what I was afraid had increased even more. As soon as the door opened a little more, I stopped my breath. I put my eyes out, but something was missing. The silhouette became more specific. For a moment I saw Emma's yellow face. She was just as fear of this strange situation as I was. What are we doing now? I couldn't take a step, just seeing the trembling body of Leo. My soul shrunk even more. It was as if he was waiting for something. A vote inside Mehmet. Someone was in the house, or at least nearby. After that moment, the feeling of uncertainty began to capture everything. Emma took another step towards me and whispered, "Is anyone there?" I carefully turned my eyes towards the door. Gradually, but carefully I opened the door. The silence became heavy. It was terrible to feel someone so close. It was like the beginning of escape, but I did not know what to do. I made a few steps in, and contacted where Leo was standing. I quickly stepped back, but taking a deep breath. I again focused patiently. The silhouette behind the door started contacting quickly. 1,000,000 thoughts were running in my mind, but everything was a name, migration or conflict. It creaked open slowly, and everything seemed to slow down, or almost come to a stop. A heartbeat raced as if trying to break free from a cage of flesh. I felt shaking spread throughout my body. Leo's barking grew louder, affirming what was a sign of intruders. Everything seemed to sharpen, clearing away fog. The meaning of it all became profound. I shut my eyes against whoever it would be. It was a flurry of movement, with 1,000,000 questions ringing in my mind. And just as I wondered what will happen, I heard a deep voice thunder through the air, freezing everything at that moment. An eerily familiar voice. "I missed you," and there he was. My husband was standing at my doorstep. He wore the same outfit he had put on for his business trip. Everything felt so normal down to the grain of sand under my feet, even though at that point my life felt inverted. But there was something strange on his face. The smile was wide, but there was something missing in that smile. It was cold, it was fake. At that moment, a dreadful feeling descended deep within. That smile told me something was not right, that maybe he knew everything. My husband was a stranger. Leo, our cute dog, usually adored my husband. But tonight, in the midst of this abnormal situation, Leo was acting differently. It was so strange that the fear in my eyes intensified. Normally this loyal pit bull would happily play with my husband, but now he had retreated. He continued to growl, baring his teeth. I was so anxious that my body tensed up. What was he doing? Why was he acting like this? Leo's behavior emphasized that something was wrong. Something had likely changed. I looked into my husband's eyes, and without saying a word, he eventually moved his hand into his pants pocket. That very act bred fear deep within me. What is he now up to? My breath came quick with his hand in his pocket. This was no ordinary gesture. Suddenly everything had heightened in danger. Did he really come back tonight? I kept asking myself, or had he never left me? My mind kept going over that same question. Everything became appallingly hazy. Had he really gone for any business, or had he spent half the night watching us? Each question blurred into the next. Inside me, fear mounted. It was all too strange to be real. Emma was still eyeing me full of alarmed expectations. She must be thinking the same thoughts. My husband's behavior had changed everything. It was like the whole world was about to collapse into disaster under the heel of Leo's uninterrupted barking. The fake smile on my husband's face was present, but there was a certain glint in his eyes. They betrayed that something was wrong, that something dreadful was about to happen. I heard that small voice inside me saying everything was coming nearer, but I could not fathom what it was at that moment. I understood deep down. I wouldn't even be able to breathe freely. My emotions were triggered by the speed at which my husband reached for his pocket. I was unable to understand the movement's purpose because it happened so quickly. Emma tried to ask me in silence what we ought to do. However, I was unsure of how to respond. I took a slow step back, but my husband's gaze was still fixed on me. I had the impression that everything would come to a head in a matter of seconds. My husband's strange and icy manner, combined with Leo's barking, made me feel even more terrified. I watched as my husband slowly took his hand out of his pocket, and something glint in it. My heart pounded. What was it? What did my husband have in his pocket? As I slowly focused my eyes on the object in my husband's hand, I thought about how chaotic everything was, and how difficult it would be to leave this night behind. Amid Leo's continued barking, my husband's fake smile made me feel like everything was an illusion. Are you really doing this? I thought. I tried to believe that everything was a game, but a voice inside me said it was all real, that if the story resonated with you, please like, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps us craft more engaging stories for you.